Alright, so in the Halloween franchise, we have a lot of controversial timelines, but maybe the most divisive timeline in this franchise is the David Gordon Green Trilogy. So, since it's October, I figured it'd be a perfect time to go back and revisit these three movies that not only brought the Halloween franchise back to life, but also divided an entire fan base. What is up, everyone? Welcome to Mad Blood, and like I said, I'll be revisiting the David Gordon Green Trilogy from 2018 to 2022, which are movies that have a lot of moments in them that are absolutely incredible, but also have some moments where I'm thinking to myself as I'm watching these movies, what the hell are we doing here? But some of the best music in this entire franchise, a great Myers mask, some great Halloween vibes overall, but also easily one of the sloppiest trilogies that I can possibly imagine in this franchise. There are complete sections of some of these movies that feel so disjointed that it just distracts you from some of the great things that they're doing in that movie. But let's just get right into it and talk about the 11th movie in the franchise, Halloween 2018, a direct sequel to Halloween 1978, which is also ignoring all the other movies in the franchise. And it's crazy to think that before Halloween 2018 came out, it had been 9 years since the last Halloween movie, which is the longest drought in the entire franchise. So fans of the franchise were just foaming at the mouth, ready for a new movie, ready to show up for a new movie, and show up they did. Halloween 2018, when it was released, became the highest grossing slasher movie ever at the time. And during that 9-year period, it wasn't like they weren't trying to make a new Halloween movie. They knew that horror fans still wanted Halloween. Rob Zombie's movies did pretty damn well. They tried to come out with a new Halloween movie in 2010 called Halloween 3D, because 3D was really popular during that time, but it was going to revolve around Laurie Strode, who at that time had killed Dr. Loomis, I guess, had killed Sheriff Brackett, and then Michael Myers was going to track her down in a psychiatric hospital. But because some of the actors from Rob Zombie's movies and just a lot of things fell through the cracks, that didn't end up happening, obviously. And then a few years later, they were really close to rebooting it again. They had hired writers and the director and all of that, and then it all just ended up falling through once again, which sucks because Tyler Mane was going to come back, which would have been amazing. Scout Taylor Compton was going to come back, which would have also been amazing. And like I said, it's not like they weren't trying. They knew Halloween was not a dead franchise. But I do think that gap, that 9-year gap, really got the Halloween fans itching really hard for a new movie. It felt like a long enough break that the franchise wasn't really getting played out year after year after year. And that clearly showed in the box office for 2018. And of course, throughout this franchise, there are supernatural elements to the Michael Myers character, but this timeline in particular takes Michael to probably a totally different supernatural level than he had ever been at before. I mean, he basically gets fatal wounds in pretty much every single one of these movies, over and over and over. Gets stabbed in the back with a pitchfork at one point, ran over by a car, stabbed a million times, beaten by an entire mob, shot several times in that mob scene at point blank. No medical help at all, but just keeps on trucking. Then, of course, in Halloween Ends, when he kills in that movie, he basically charges up like a battery. But with that said, without a doubt, Halloween 2018 is the most grounded movie out of these three movies. The movie that is the most like kind of the tone of Halloween 1978. And yeah, after all these years of Michael being locked up in this timeline, we start off this movie at Smith's Grove following these podcasters who are investigating Michael's story. They're finding out more information about Michael's story, and they want to see him. And there's just something about in this scene, the way that it's shot, the way that it cuts to the other patients, and the lighting of all of it. There's something about it that I feel like is very immersive. It kind of feels like I'm there with them. But I also love how Sartain is just like, yeah, come over here and just yell at my patient. I guess at this point, it can't hurt. But I will say, after all these years of the Halloween franchise being away, when that podcaster guy yells at Michael Myers, say something, then boom, the Halloween score kicks in with the Halloween title card. I feel like if you are a Halloween fan at all, and you did not get goosebumps during that moment when the music kicked in and everything like that and the Halloween font popped up, after all these years, you are not human. Plus, in those opening credits, we got the pumpkin there, kind of like rising from the dead, like this franchise sort of rising from the dead. I love that. But yeah, you know, after all these years and with this timeline, you know there's another person that we need to meet pretty early on in this movie. And yep, it's got to be Laurie Strode, and to see what she's been up to after all these years. Now, I've talked about this before, but in retrospect, after all three of these movies in the David Gordon Green trilogy have came out, I feel like it makes more sense that Laurie's character in 2018 and Laurie's character in Halloween Ends should have been flopped, because at this point, Michael, I get that she's preparing for Michael and she's getting ready. She wants to kill him. She doesn't want to avoid him. She wants to actually kill him, and I get that angle of it. But Michael here is locked up. Hell, she could go and visit him and see him probably if she wants to. She knows where he is. He hasn't been harming anyone from what we know. He's locked up. He's there. But yet she's on high alert, super anxious, tons of anxiety, getting ready to kill, preparing, basically ready for doomsday. But yet in Halloween Ends, Michael is literally on the loose. Like, he could be in Laurie's backyard any moment. But yet Laurie in that movie at one point is basically like, you know what? I don't care anymore. I know Michael could be over here shearing my garden as we speak and killing my local neighbor, but you know what? It's fine. Show your tits to grief. It's not a big deal. Now, it wouldn't be that big of an issue if 2018 was the only movie in this timeline, the only movie that David Gordon Green had made, then it would be totally fine. But after the three movies had came out, it just seems like Laurie's character should have been reversed in what is going down, especially with Michael Myers. Now, with that said, as this video goes along, I will, of course, talk about how they probably had no idea what they were going to even do for that third movie, which obviously contributed to stuff like this, which I understand some angles of that, but you know, yeah, like I said, I'll talk about that more as this video goes along. And yeah, of course, with Laurie Strode in particular, it's a tragic story, no doubt. When you go back and watch Halloween 1978, just how much, you know, promise that girl looks like she probably had, how innocent she was, how much of just like kind of a perfect all-American girl she was, to now see where she's at now, losing her child over the years, having all this trauma, and just basically being a complete wreck. Yeah, it's a tragic story, and I think that part of it, they do film that, and I think that angle, even though a bit over the top at times, overall is pretty effective. And after we see what Laurie is up to, we then meet the rest of her family, and I don't really understand people's gripes about the whole peanut butter in my penis scene. I just feel like it's a throwaway line in this movie. It's not really that big of a deal. It kind of also fits the dad's personality. Plus, it's not like it was his final words right as Michael Myers is stabbing him in the chest or something like that. That would have been a different story. It's just like a throwaway line in this quick scene to introduce us to the different personalities in the family. And yeah, it's a part of this guy's personality as this movie goes along. It clearly fits his character. And yeah, like I said, it's just kind of a throwaway line in the movie. It's a really quick moment. I've never looked at it as a big deal. I don't know why people get so upset about that. They feel like it's such a weird tonal difference between this movie and Halloween 1978. But then those are also the same people who like really love some of the moments in Halloween Kills. It's just a weird dynamic. But I kind of look at it like you're getting an extra large popcorn and then you're complaining because there's one kernel at the very bottom that's burnt. It's like, come on, guys. Just relax. Now, I've definitely been critical about putting podcasters in horror movies over the years, but I do think not only in Halloween 2018 was this one of the early iterations of that angle in a slasher script, but I also just think overall they do a pretty good job with these podcasters early on in this movie in particular. I just don't think it's as corny of an approach to podcasters as we usually see in a lot of horror movies nowadays. These guys feel like more like investigative journalists. They have some eeriness to them with their story they're trying to gather and all of that information that they're trying to get. Whereas I feel like in a lot of more recent horror movies where they have these podcasters, because it's such a cool and in thing right now, they portray the podcasters as like these cringy clickbait influencers. And I just think that's a dumb angle to go. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Terrifier franchise. Yes, I'm looking at you, the newest I Know What You Did Last Summer. Never enjoyed that angle. I think it is corny as hell. But like I said, I think this angle with these podcasters, I think it works in this movie. And damn, man, do you remember in Halloween 1978 when Michael runs into that kid outside of the school and just grabs him and lets him go? Well, not in this timeline. They are immediately hinting to you the brutality of this timeline and of this movie as Michael like brutally bashes this kid's head against the window and then snaps his neck, after the transport vehicle crashes. And you're like, holy shit, all right, they're going there in this movie. Now, speaking of brutality, that immediately gets kicked up a notch in this movie with the whole mechanic shop bathroom scene. We get that pretty cool, fun aftermath of that guy's death where it's like the cashier laying on the table with like his jaw completely almost ripped off laying there on the table. And then Michael, trickles the teeth over the bathroom stall. And then he kills the two podcasters. Now, to talk about the kills in Halloween 2018 in particular, I feel like it's a good blend of just being turned up enough to add some modern brutality to this movie and make the movie pretty damn fun for me, but also not make the movie feel way too different than the more subtle kills that we get to see in Halloween 1978, because when you make the kills just way too crazy and over the top, it would almost make this movie not even feel like a Halloween movie. Now, the original Halloween 2 is one of my favorite slasher movies ever made, and the kills in that movie are definitely turned up from Halloween 1978, but similar to 2018, I think they turn it up just enough to keep it really fun and gritty, but not make it feel like it's a totally different franchise. And then, of course, after he kills the podcasters, Mikey is like, you know why I'm here? And then he opens up that trunk and he reveals to us the new version of the Michael Myers mask. It's more worn after all these years. It's probably been in an evidence locker somewhere for a very long time, other than when cops want to bring it out for like a Halloween party trick. But a great all-time mask in this franchise. One of my favorites. It's like symmetrical, worn, and just looks emotionless like it should. And yeah, kind of similar to what I said about the masks in the Rob Zombie movies, you look at this 2018 mask and you immediately can see that the Michael Myers DNA is in this mask. But yet, it's still not too repetitive. It feels new and fresh, like it's a new kind of just take on the Michael Myers mask. And yeah, I think it's a great addition to this franchise. One of the best masks we've ever seen for Michael Myers. And now that they've definitively kicked the whole brother-sister timeline to the curb in this particular timeline, Michael is even more of just a shark swimming around the neighborhood in Haddonfield in this movie, killing people that are in his way, almost with no rhyme or reason. And a perfect example of that is that big moment when Michael, after all these years, gets onto the streets in suburban Haddonfield on Halloween night and then just randomly is like, all right, I'm going to go over there. Grabs the hammer, goes in, kills that lady, goes to another house, brutally stabs that lady. And it tells you right away, like I said, Michael's going to be more like just a shark in this movie, swimming around, slaughtering people. And damn, I got to say it once again, The Mask in 2018, in those moments, on Halloween night with that lighting, it looks so damn good. And another thing that I've always thought was pretty fun about this movie and kind of felt fresh in this franchise for me, especially in comparison to the other two movies in this trilogy, is that in a lot of ways, this movie has some of that like coming of age stuff intertwined with all the typical Halloween murdering and chaos that goes on Halloween night in Haddonfield, which I enjoy. I kind of do find myself enjoying following Allison's story. We're at the school dance, everybody's all dressed up, getting getting into all the shenanigans that young kids do. But yeah, we're following a little bit of Allison's life, her friends, her love life, that love triangle, which intertwines with the story. It's not too much where it just becomes like this young coming of age Halloween movie. No, it's just enough in there to add a little variety to the franchise. And also on top of that, I think it just adds a little bit more development to the town of Haddonfield. We're not just spending the majority of the movie surrounding babysitters and Michael Myers killing people on Halloween night and trick-or-treaters. We're seeing some other stuff in the town. Like I said, the high school, the kids at the high school, some of the things going on with Allison, which, like I said, I think is fun. By the way, speaking of babysitting, I think that little kid Julian in Halloween 2018 is a fun character that they add to this movie and adds a little something to this movie. Even though he's not in this movie a lot, I think he's great. A fun little child actor, kind of in some ways reminds me of like Reggie the Reckless from Friday the 13th Part 5, if you've seen that movie. But yeah, Julian, a fun little character who adds a little like humor to some parts in this movie. And of course, a big part of bringing back Michael Myers after all these years is who you're going to cast to mainly play Michael Myers. And I do think James Jude Courtney did a damn good job, especially in 2018, with the character creeping through the shadows, stalking some of the movements that Michael Myers is known for, especially being a direct sequel to 1978. At times, he is a little bit tall and a little bit lanky for my taste. He's not a perfect like iteration of the Michael Myers character. He's probably not my favorite or anything like that. I mean, he's definitely not my favorite in the franchise portraying Michael Myers, but very solid, especially in 2018. And speaking of the other characters in this movie, I actually like Sartain in 2018 as kind of like the new Loomis, even as Laurie puts it. I mean, he's no Donald Pleasance or anything like that, but he's just different enough to give a new, fresh take to that type of a doctor with Michael Myers. But I think Sartain, just in general, is a good addition to this. Plus, as you get to know the character a little bit, you can tell there's like just something off about this guy. He clearly seems a little bit too obsessed with Michael Myers in some sort of a weird way. He seems a little bit evil, and I want to stick around to find out like his character and see his character's evolution throughout this movie. And yeah, he does show us that, of course, towards the end of this movie when he stabs Hawkins in the neck in order to basically protect Michael Myers. But he also wants to just feel that rush of killing after studying Michael Myers for all these years. He's always wondered, like, does this guy get off on killing? Like, what does he feel? And yeah, Sartain putting on Michael's mask at that point is a little bit weird. I don't really have a big problem with that, but it does kind of make sense that, I mean, after studying and working with somebody like Michael Myers over all these years, yeah, you would eventually become pretty fucked up. And I love his death too in this movie. He's laying on the ground and he's like, Michael, say something. And Michael's just like, nah. And then just smashes his head like a pumpkin. And I also think it was a smart idea in the script to add that angle of how Laurie and Michael are going to come back together to have some sort of a showdown. We don't just want to have them randomly run into each other in the neighborhood or something. No, it has to do with, because the brother-sister timeline doesn't exist in this timeline, it's Sartain's obsession with Michael's story, and he brings Michael to Laurie. And I think it's an effective storyline and script idea that makes sense, is unique, and I think is creative. But yeah, I think overall in 2018, they do a pretty damn good job with the new characters, who they casted, how they write the characters in 2018. And Sartain is a good example of that for me personally. And I have to talk about just the sound design and the score, especially in 2018, but really in this entire trilogy, which cannot be said enough just how great it is, especially in 2018. I feel like it is pretty damn perfect to me. Like, the score has that foundation of the 1978 score, of course, in it, but it's just modern and it's just fresh enough that it's truly amazing. And I think the music just throughout this entire movie and this trilogy really is pretty damn epic to me and gives me goosebumps at several points in this trilogy. And the music and the sound design overall is honestly one of the best parts of this entire David Gordon Green trilogy. And I think I've talked about this maybe a little bit before on my channel, but usually horror movies don't ever give me nightmares. But I remember a few years ago, after watching Halloween 2018, It was weird. I went to bed that night and I remember waking up in the middle of the night because I had a nightmare about Halloween 2018, especially at the end of this movie when Laurie comes out of the basement and she's walking around the house, the way it looks, the 70s or 80s kind of wood paneling and how eerie it is and how long those shots linger. Go back and watch 2018. You expect Michael to pop out at any moment, but it just keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. And it's very, very quiet. And I think they build the tension really damn well. And like I said, several years ago, after watching this movie, I had a nightmare about those scenes and Michael potentially popping out in Laurie's house. And I just think there's something to be said about that. I think it's really effective at building that tension. Like I said, the eeriness, the way it's shot, the way it's acted, I think it's really damn good. And yeah, you could say at the end of Halloween 2018, it's a little bit repetitive when you consider the ending to the original Halloween 2, with Michael basically just being engulfed in flames. Yes, it's a different location, and yes, how everything goes down is of course different, but still, there is some repetitiveness with that, which, I don't really love, but I don't have a huge problem with either. But really, in the end, this is not a perfect movie, but I do truly think that Halloween 2018 is a damn good Halloween movie. I think they really hit the mark on some of the most important things when you're rebooting a franchise like this. How's the new Michael Myers? Amazing, I think, in this movie. How's the new Mask? One of the best in this entire franchise. And a lot of the new side characters, like I mentioned, were not only casted really well, but I think the way that they wrote their story is pretty damn effective too. By the way, a reboot of the Halloween franchise? Okay. Well, how's the new music gonna be? Like I said a second ago, absolutely incredible. And yeah, of course, the Halloween vibes in this movie I think are absolutely on point. And like I said, as far as the kills and the brutality from Michael Myers in this movie, they turn it up just enough to make it feel like a modern Halloween movie, which I think is really effective in this movie. All right, are you guys ready for evil to die tonight? Well, of course, that's not gonna happen, but regardless, moving on to Halloween Kills from 2021. And we have a lot to talk about with this movie. Now, originally they wanted to film both Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills back to back, but they ultimately decided nah, we're going to see how Halloween 2018 does until we go ahead and film the next sequel in this franchise. And I feel like you do kind of notice that in this movie. And of course, after the success of 2018 absolutely exploding, just making truckloads of more money for Blumhouse. And say what you will about Halloween Kills, one thing that I do really enjoy about Halloween Kills is when the predecessor to your movie is a classic, in my opinion, a movie that did so well at the box office and a lot of people really love, just keep that ball rolling, baby. And I really enjoy how in Halloween Kills, very similar to the original Halloween and Halloween 2, they just continue that same night, just building off of that previous movie. So I do think Halloween Kills has that going for it. And yep, just seconds after we learn that, yes, Hawkins is going to survive in this movie, we get that infamous flashback moment to Halloween night, 1978. Because, of course, in this timeline, Michael did get captured after the events that happened at the end of Halloween 1978, but we never saw it happen. So here we do get a glimpse into what happened. And also in this flashback, what I think is interesting is we do get a little bit more information about Michael Myers' backstory, especially kind of what he was like a little bit before he killed his sister at 6 years old, which I'm sure is something that a lot of us kind of wondered about. And I know a lot of us want to keep it ambiguous and mysterious. We don't want to learn everything about the backstory of Michael Myers, even though some of the stuff they do in Rob Zombie's Halloween, for me, I don't really have a problem with, but some people want it to stay mysterious. And I think in this moment, we just get a little bit as this cop here is telling us about how his mom used to make him go and play with Michael because she felt bad. And he was just kind of weird. Like he used to just stare out his sister's window. Now, obviously, this whole flashback scene makes Hawkins look like a pretty big rookie dumbass throughout this entire thing. And then also the other cop, when you're pretty sure there's somebody else in the house with you, you see the footprints, there's other indications that somebody might be nearby at the very least. Why would you stand there and just stare out the window and reminisce about old times in that moment? It's like, come on, man. What are you doing? But regardless, with this flashback scene, a very solid recreation, I think, of the tone of Halloween Night in 1978. Also pretty cool that they found this like construction coordinator that was working on set, and they're like, man, you look a lot like Dr. Loomis. And then they just went ahead and used him in the movie and did everything practically. He didn't do the voice, somebody else did, but still, that's pretty cool as well. And also, just the mask in the flashback scene also is different from the mask in Halloween 1978, but also very, very solid. And like I mentioned in Halloween 2018, I like it when they show us a little bit more of what's going on in Haddonfield on Halloween other than just trick-or-treaters and babysitters. And here, we get to see like some people, you know, hanging out in costumes at the bar. And yes, we get to see a lot of old familiar faces. Now, being the big fan of this franchise that I am, I do love some small subtle fan service throughout this franchise. Like in this movie, we get the 3 masks there from Halloween 3, which I think is a fun moment, and I think that's done well and subtle, and really only fans of the franchise who have seen that movie will know what that is. But outside of little things like that I think were done well, in Halloween Kills, we get a lot of fan service in this movie that I feel like they are just bashing us over the head with. I think it's way too much. Hey, remember that person and that person and that person? Oh, here's a big person that you haven't seen in many, many years. But guess what? Wait, there's more. And it just keeps on coming and coming. I prefer it when my fan service is a little bit more subtle, a little bit more creative, and a little bit more unique, where true fans of the franchise are going to kind of be the only ones that recognize, and they're like, oh shit. It makes you kind of feel good as a fan of the franchise that you notice those little things, and you can tell somebody who's not a fan of the franchise about them, so then they'll recognize and be like, oh shit, damn, that's pretty cool. But in this one, I just feel like they just lay it out and they tell you all about it. And hey, this person right here, just to remind you, they're from Halloween 1978. And it's just like, dude, let's just chill, guys, all right? Oh, and by the way, just a slight little tangent, and I know this couple is also in Halloween 2018, but that couple dressed up as the nurse and the doctor, I'm like, can you guys just immediately die? You're just annoying as hell. Oh, I'm sorry, we're talking and having fun at a bar. I didn't realize this was a goddamn library or something. Give me a break. And yeah, they do get it in this movie, man. That guy gets the knife right in the eye. Definitely a holy shit moment. And then the wife. One of those moments where your theater will just like audibly laugh or just say, damn, you know, when she accidentally shoots herself in the face when the door hits her. Hilarious moment. And like I said, they were really annoying early on, and they end up getting it in this movie. And yeah, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, I don't love how they bring back Michael in this movie. It doesn't ruin the movie or anything like that, but as soon as this whole like firefighter slaughter scene goes down in Halloween Kills, I remember watching this movie for the very first time, my spidey senses immediately started to tingle that something might be a little bit off in this movie, especially in comparison to 2018. Now, first of all, I'm not a firefighter. Maybe a firefighter in the comments section can tell me why, but why in the hell would these firefighters risk their life to go into a old burning house that is almost ash at this point to save a serial killer? Are you gonna almost die for that? But now to get a little bit more back on topic. So if you've been around my channel a little bit, you know that I really enjoy slasher movies, and I really enjoy like good gore in my slasher movies. So this whole firefighter scene is this weird dynamic of, yeah, we get a lot of gore and a lot of blood in this scene. But on the other hand, it's Halloween, guys. Like all of a sudden, Michael Myers is like this superhero that just walks out right in front of an entire fire department and starts slaughtering people one by one. When did this character become this way? Also, this character wasn't this way in Halloween 2018, I feel like. Now, I get there are probably a lot of fans of this whole firefighter moment here, but for me personally, I would have been way more satisfied, and it would have made way more sense for the Michael Myers character that I love if he would have had that same kill in this movie like he did for the guy who fell down underneath the floor, and then he just shoves that pickaxe thing like right into that guy's face. That is a gnarly kill. But I would have preferred it if he kind of just figured out some sort of a way to slither out the back and then maybe kill one or two more firefighters in a brutal way just outside in the shadows. That would have made more sense. And then he kind of escapes into the night, heading back to Haddonfield. Whereas here, it's just like, okay, Michael's just marching. I mean, that's a cool shot of him coming out of the house with the water and the fire and all of that. That's a really cool shot in this trilogy, without a doubt. But he just comes on out and is like, all right, come on, guys. You want to bring it? And then that firefighter gives us like the weakest fire hose of all time, spraying Michael Myers with like a little trickle of water. That's weird. And thus far in this trilogy in Halloween 2018, they have clearly told us this is an older Michael Myers. They showed us at the end of 2018, Laurie Strode, an older lady, holding her own against Michael Myers. He's older, he's bald, he's wrinkly, he's gray. But here in this moment, that continuity is just not there. He's taking on an entire, probably physically in their prime, fire department and just absolutely slaughtering them. And they have weapons too. It's not like these guys don't have anything. They have saws and all kinds of other things that fire departments have on hand. But yet Michael is like Arnold in Commando and absolutely just slaughtering these young fellas. It's like, why don't these guys just gang up on him and just beat the absolute shit out of him? But really, this whole firefighter scene to me is one of those early indications of, come on, guys, like your story writing and your storytelling here, it's starting to not make any sense. And speaking of kills though, when Michael goes and stabs that lady later with the light bulb right through the neck, that is so gurgly and juicy. It is kind of crazy. I feel like you can feel the pain through the screen, but also like there's no way that older lady survives that in Halloween Ends. It's like, come on now. Now, with all of those things that I just said about Halloween Kills, I still think as this movie is going along, it's a very competently made movie. There's some issues with the script. There's some issues with the story, of course, that I feel like. But the acting overall, I feel like is very solid once again, like it is in 2018. The Halloween vibes, once again, I think is great. And like I mentioned earlier, also the score and the sound design in Halloween Kills, just like Halloween 2018, is really damn good, which adds something to this movie. And now to talk about the hospital scene here just for a minute, I feel like I don't have as big of a problem with the hospital scene as a lot of other people do. My perspective on that scene is basically this. I feel like the movie was trying to show us, obviously, what kind of a mob mentality looks like, whether it's online or whether it's offline, wherever it might take place. It's going to be very, very similar. Just this blind rage from a group of people acting impulsively, following one person, just kind of being sheep in the end in a lot of different ways. And in that moment, I'm not even sure if Tommy really even saw the guy other than maybe just the back of his white gown. And now, yeah, you could probably make the argument that he should have known that this guy is probably like 6 inches shorter than Michael Myers. But really, I just think the mob kind of, maybe somebody saw like a glance of something that might have looked like the gown from Michael Myers or somebody from Smith's Grove, and then they just screamed out Michael Myers, and everybody is already very riled up. They're in a blind rage. They clearly wanted us to see all of that. And somebody just screamed, Michael Myers is over there. And then everybody just ran like a mob does. And then that guy ended up dying. I don't really have that big of a problem with that scene. I know for a lot of people, it kind of ruins the movie for them. Evil dies tonight. I get all of that. And I get kind of the Shakespearean lines that we get, including that stuff in this movie, which is definitely not all that great. But this whole hospital scene, it really doesn't ruin the movie for me, even though I have a lot of gripes in Halloween Kills. But with that said, I just mentioned that is not one of my least favorite scenes in this entire trilogy. What is my least favorite scene in this trilogy? Probably a scene that I absolutely hate. Now, for a trilogy, Halloween Kills, especially Halloween 2018 up until this point, that have overall been filmed really, really impressively, I feel like the whole mob beatdown scene of Michael Myers is filmed absolutely terribly. I just think it is way too overly dramatic. These crazy zoom-ins and slow motion shots. You take your turn on Michael, then I'll take my turn. And then, oh, whoops, he's getting up and slaughtering all of us one by one. We're shooting this guy 5 or 6 times from point blank, and he doesn't even blink. And at the end of that scene, it's just like, oh, whoops, we're all dead. I think it's probably the worst moment in this entire trilogy. And like I mentioned a little bit earlier, I get in the Halloween franchise. I've seen all of these movies a million times. I understand there has always been a supernatural angle to the Michael Myers character. But in this part of the movie, and in Halloween Kills, really just in general, I feel like we're just veering off into like fantasy land or something at this point. For me, with the Michael Myers character, I don't mind a little bit of that supernatural angle. We've even had some of that in Halloween 1978, of course. But I like it when Michael still shows a little bit of vulnerability. He's not even like a 1 ounce human, I feel like, in this mob scene at all. Like I mentioned a second ago, he gets shot, I think it is 5 times from somebody from point blank range. And it's not like he falls over and kind of pauses and he's injured, he's barely getting up. You watch that scene over again. He falls over and doesn't even pause for a single second. He immediately just jumps right up like he tripped on his shoelaces or something. Me personally, I just like a little bit more vulnerability with Michael Myers. I like to see him wounded and a little bit human like we see in some of the earlier movies in this franchise, the Rob Zombie movies, whatever have you. I think that angle of making him just a little bit of that blend of more human, little supernatural is better. Whereas, at this point in Halloween Kills, like I said, this is basically just becoming fantasy. Now, there are 2 endings to Halloween Kills. There's the extended cut ending and there's the other ending. The other ending essentially just being, Michael kills Laurie's daughter and then we see Michael in the house and then we cut to Laurie just standing in the hospital looking out the window. But in the extended cut, which is the most recent version that I saw, we see Michael killing Laurie's daughter there right by the window, and then Laurie in the hospital kind of senses that there's something wrong, so she calls her daughter, and then Michael, kind of similar to that moment in 1978, Michael picks up the phone and Laurie knows who it is because she hears just the heavy breathing on the other end of the phone. And then Laurie says, "I'm coming for you, Michael," and then storms out of the hospital with the knife in hand. And then boom, we immediately just cut to the credits, which is clearly showing you like, okay, the next movie is going to pick up right there and show us Laurie's journey, which after you've seen Halloween Ends is an ending that doesn't really make any sense at all, because then all of a sudden we cut to this random people we've never seen before a year later after the events in Halloween 28. It's just weird. So the other ending where Laurie's just kind of sitting there recovering and we don't really get any hints about what's immediately going to happen after that, kind of intertwines, I guess, a little bit better, sort of, with Halloween Ends, even though clearly still pretty damn messy. But really with Halloween Kills, there's just a few like glaringly just clunky and poorly written scenes, in my opinion, that really work against some of the great stuff that they're doing in this movie. The firefighter scene, like I mentioned a second ago, the mob beatdown scene of Michael Myers, and also just the lack of continuity with the Michael Myers character from what we saw with the character in Halloween 2018, which would make sense if this was a different timeline or a different director. But I feel like there's so many things that are different in Halloween Kills with the Michael Myers character, even though it is supposed to be the exact same night. Yet the style of some of these scenes in the movie and the Michael Myers character being so much more supernatural than we've been led to believe in Halloween Kills on the same night is just really weird and works against this movie. Now, to me, Kills is just a wild journey. Is this a terrible slasher movie? No, not at all. I think the music, like I mentioned earlier, is incredible in this movie. The acting is solid. The movie overall looks really good. Michael looks great. There's some scenes that are definitely fun for me in this movie, but there's also a lot of moments in Halloween Kills, like I said, that work against some of the great stuff in this movie, and in particular, just some of the amateur storytelling. All right, that's enough talking about Halloween Kills. It is now time to talk about one of the most controversial movies in this entire franchise, the last movie in the David Gordon Green trilogy, which of course is Halloween Ends from 2022. And I remember watching Halloween Ends in the theater like it was yesterday. I just remember that feeling in the opening stages of this movie. I remember thinking to myself, should I go out and check to make sure I'm in the right movie? This was before the credits rolled. Just because things were so different than Halloween Kills. I was like, who are these people? what are we doing here? I don't understand what's going on. And when it comes to Halloween Ends, in my opinion, this movie is the most disrespectful movie to the character of Michael Myers in this entire franchise. And yes, I do think more disrespectful than Halloween Resurrection. But Matt, what about Trick or Treat, motherfucker? Like, that was pretty disrespectful, making Michael Myers look bad in that scene. If you go back and watch that scene, Busta Rhymes just kind of catches him off guard. It's not really a thing with Michael Myers. Plus, go back and watch, like I said, Halloween Resurrection. Michael Myers kicks ass from the beginning to the end of that movie. He is slaughtering people, literally from the beginning to the end. And Halloween Ends, I mean, Corey is bitch slapping Michael at certain points in this movie, knocking him to the ground, taking his mask like he's stealing a kid's sack lunch. Like I said, Halloween Ends is the most disrespectful movie to the character of Michael Myers, which of course we'll get into a little bit more as I talk more about Halloween Ends. But with that said, so it's 2019 now, it's Halloween night, we're following this kid Corey babysitting this other kid. And yeah, there is definitely a holy shit moment early in this movie as this kid dies, and then we immediately, boom, cut to the Halloween end credits, reminding you, if you weren't sure, that yes, this is a Halloween movie in the Halloween franchise. And there's a lot of themes throughout these three movies, especially in a movie like Halloween Kills. And a heavy theme in this movie in particular is that Michael is still out there, and Haddonfield now at this point has turned into this town that's kind of plagued by just paranoia and grief from the events that happened before. People blaming everybody for all different sorts of things. People dying and blaming Michael Myers for all the negative things happening in the town. It's just not at all the Haddonfield that people remember. And guess what, guys? We then cut to 3 years after the events that we saw in the opening sequence with Corey right there. 4 years after the events from Halloween 2018 and Halloween Kills, where Laurie's daughter was slaughtered, friends and people that she knows in town also brutally murdered by Michael Myers. Michael Myers is now on the loose, but yet Laurie has now decided not to let fear run her life. She's going to bake pies, she's going to show grief her tits, and just write a little memoir and have a nice little white picket fence life. And I already talked about this a little bit earlier with 2018, how I feel like ends in 2018, Laurie should be kind of switched. I understand this whole concept of like, let's put it behind us, let's finally get over this, because it is basically this whole Michael Myers thing has ruined Laurie's life. But still, you're going to dedicate your entire life to trying to kill Michael Myers, be prepared for Michael Myers, and the one time that he is now on the loose, you're going to suddenly decide to give it up. Now, I understand that her daughter died. That's a big turning point in her life to just become a totally changed person. But still, it still just seems a little weird to me. So obviously a big part of this movie is Rowan Campbell as Corey Cunningham. And I like Rowan. I think he's good in this movie. I think he's a good actor in the stuff that I've seen him in thus far. It's great to see that he's getting more roles in the genre. I'm really looking forward to seeing him in the Silent Night, Deadly Night remake. I hope that that movie is just a ton of bloody fun. And I think that the hate that Rohan gets in particular is just absolutely not his fault. I think it 100% has to do with just the writing of his character. His character not being introduced earlier in this franchise like it should have, if they had any sort of an idea what they were going to do. And I get it, they probably had zero concept of a third movie. A second movie, yes, they did. They almost filmed that back to back, like I mentioned earlier. But still, you know, even just introducing Corey a little bit somewhere in one of the other movies, at the dance for Haddonfield, somewhere else along the way, bumping into him 1 or 2 times, establishing that character early. And like I said earlier, they probably didn't even know if they were going to get a third movie, and probably had no idea if they did get that opportunity, what that movie would be about. So if you're not able to introduce this Corey character earlier, which they clearly weren't able to and didn't do, then ditch that idea. Make this a different anthology Halloween type movie with another mass killer with the same kind of a concept that's not Michael Myers. Then also, you're not disrespecting the Michael Myers character because it's a totally different horror villain or masked killer that you're using instead, so nobody's gonna give a shit. So yeah, not to go on and on about this whole concept, but it's not a bad concept at all. And people try to use that fact of like, oh, this movie will be a gem many years from now. You guys will regret saying anything negative about Halloween Ends. That's not the point. The point is, in this trilogy, this movie literally makes no sense at all. All right, and next, let's talk about another little something in Halloween Ends that to me doesn't make any sense at all and really has no reason to even exist in this movie other than to just distract people from the good things that you're doing in this movie, which is the whole marching band bully thing with Corey. It's not that it's impossible or anything to have people in a marching band that are bullies. It's the fact that it's so outside of the norm that, like I said, you're just distracting us for some unnecessary reason from the good things that are happening in this scene, like Lori noticing Corey's getting bullied, helping to slash their tires, kind of taking him under their wing. I enjoy that angle of it. Lori kind of being a little bit of a mentor because she's kind of a castaway in this town, so it's kind of cool when she sees another castaway who's being mistreated by the town and kind of taking him under her wing because she is definitely the one person that could give him advice. So just the whole marching band thing, like I said, it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that there's kids in a marching band that bully people. I've seen it before myself, but it's just one of those things. It's just so outside of the norm, and it just has no reason to exist in this movie. All right, now let's talk about Master Splinter for a minute. I mean, Michael Myers living on down in the sewers there, chilling, living off of rats, whatever the hell he's been doing for all these years. That moment, too, where he decides not to kill Corey, I feel like with the continuity of these three movies and the lack of continuity in a lot of cases, like we already talked about before with kills and also so far with this movie. So thus far in this trilogy, Michael has been shown to us, like I mentioned earlier, that he is basically a shark in these movies. He's swimming around Haddonfield, just kind of killing people pretty at random at times, especially with the brother-sister timeline thrown into the trash can. And in most cases, if you just happen to be in his way or in his vicinity when he kind of just feels like killing people, he is going to kill you 99.9% of the time. Whereas here, he decides like, you know what? Nah. Not this guy. Something about this guy seems kind of cool. You know, he's kind of edgy. I like that. I'm going to pull him into the sewer instead and not kill him. But I'm sure people will say, Matt, but he's injured. He's older now. He's very weak. He can't kill Corey. He needs to recharge and then he can start killing people again. So he can pull this kid into the sewer who's, I don't know, 170 pounds or whatever, but he can't lift a knife to kill him. And yes, the whole eye contact moment is one of the wildest, most supernatural things we have ever seen in this entire franchise. And the question is, did he just see something in Corey? Or did he actually transfer his evil into Corey and kind of possess Corey in a way because he sees Corey as kind of like, you know, this lost soul that Haddonfield has now turned on. Now, for me personally, my perspective is, and I know how wild this sounds, but I do believe that Michael transferred his evil into Corey, just based off of the scenes that we see after this. Corey very much seems possessed. We get some sort of scenes where he's like staring into the mirror. He's kind of looking at himself, almost not recognizing himself, playing with his hair a little bit. He even asks Allison at one point, like, what is wrong with me? Like, and he shows a lot of signs of the typical possession signs that we see in other movies in the genre. So yeah, for me, I definitely feel like Michael transferred something. I don't know what, but the evil, I guess, into Corey. But when it comes to that stuff, that's not even the important thing because that concept on its face is not a horrible idea for a different movie. But the point is, it's such an odd thing to add in the third movie of your trilogy when you have shown none of this at all in the other movies in this trilogy, this witchcrafty kind of stuff, which definitely doesn't exist in 1978, which is a movie in this timeline. So again, I feel like when people praise this movie, like this movie has some great ideas in it, and yeah, it does, but it makes no damn sense in the third movie in a trilogy. It is clearly just sloppy creative decisions left and right, which once again, like I mentioned earlier, is just another thing that distracts me from the great stuff that they're doing in Halloween Ends. Now, with that said, I do think the script in Halloween Ends is actually pretty solid in comparison, especially to Halloween Kills, which did not have a great script by any means, had way too many like Shakespearean over-the-top lines and dialogue scenes and voiceovers. And they pretty much got rid of most of that in Halloween Ends. Not all of it, but most of that, which I thought was a solid part of Halloween Ends. Now, of course, like I talked a little bit about earlier, at one point in Halloween Ends, Corey basically makes Michael Myers his bitch. He pushes him to the ground, takes his mask, all of that. It's one of those scenes where it's like, man, people who are fans of Michael Myers were immediately when I saw that moment, I was like, they are going to be mad. There are going to be a lot of people upset about what I'm seeing here on screen. Now let's talk a little bit more about the end of Halloween Ends. So we get that moment there where it kind of seems like Laurie might actually off herself, but it just turns out it's a little sleight of hand moment to catch Corey off guard and take care of him. And I didn't hate that part of the movie. I did think it was a little too over the top and a little too theatrical for me, but it was not absolutely terrible. Which, yeah, when it comes to the whole Laurie Michael showdown there at the end of the movie, I don't have a huge problem with it. You know, it's like two older people just going at it. Yeah, we get a very definitive end to Michael Myers' character, which is kind of cool, but I do totally understand if fans of the franchise were pissed going into this movie because I mean, it was definitely a rug pull from the marketing team with this movie. It was kind of like marketed as this big Laurie Michael Myers showdown, which, yes, we end up getting at the very end of this movie. But especially after Halloween Kills, if you saw that movie, you were expecting it to be a bigger part of this movie. You were expecting it to probably happen earlier in this movie, which it definitely did not. I mean, really, all in all, though, is Halloween Ends a bad movie? No, I can have some fun with this movie, definitely. Like the other movies in this trilogy, the movie looks great. The sound design is incredible. There's some good kills along the way. I mean, is it the way that I would have ended this trilogy? Absolutely not. I mean, this story is bipolar as hell. It's like, guys, pick a lane and stick with it. Now again, Halloween Ends is not my least favorite movie in this franchise, but it is on the back half of this franchise for sure for me. But overall, not a terrible movie, not a terrible concept, but come on guys, just look in the mirror and ask yourself the question. As the third movie in this trilogy, does this movie make any damn sense? And you have to tell yourself, no, not at all. But in the end, if you're a fan of Halloween Ends, that's cool. That's great. Like I said, I don't hate this movie. It does have rewatchability for me. All right, there you go, everybody. That is the David Gordon Green Halloween Trilogy Revisited. If you want some more videos from me right now, go ahead and check out one of these videos next to me. If you don't want to miss future videos on the channel, the best way to do that is to make sure you subscribe. Also, guys, do me a big favor if you enjoyed this video. Leave a like on it. It really, really does help me out a lot. Also, all of my social media links are down below in the description if you want to follow me over there. I have a Twitch channel where I live stream sometimes. Make sure you follow me over there, my Instagram, all that good stuff. But always great to talk the Halloween franchise with you guys, especially during the fall, autumn, October, Halloween season. Thank you so much for the continued support on the channel. Thanks for being a part of this community. The support here is truly humbling. I really, really appreciate you guys watching my videos. But anyways, everybody, thanks again for watching. My name is Matt, and I will talk to you in the next one.